Well, it's down to the final 5 games in the Premier League season, and it's starting to look like a much smaller battle down at the bottom of the table. Of course, we're going to look ahead today to Luton Town's crucial home match against Brentford on Saturday, before we also look ahead to the other 6 games that have survived this weekend, of course, with a few teams in FA Cup semi-final action. As always, I'll encourage you to get involved as well. Get your predictions down in the comments. And if you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap, which will be looking ahead to next weekend's action. If you like the prediction shows, then come and get involved in our main one on the Championship too. You can find our weekend predictions for that from yesterday evening up in the eye above. And boy, at the moment, no one wants to win the title to come up to the Premier League, do they? And after all the chat about the Championship being much stronger this year, now even Leicester have lost more games than Luton Town and Burnley did last year. But with Luton Town in mind, let's look ahead to the big game. It is Luton Town versus Brentford. And after what happened last weekend, it is maybe the last chance for Luton to drag Brentford into a relegation battle, because the next 2 weeks, or 3 weeks really, are going to be quite decisive in that, because Luton Town face Brentford this weekend, Brentford face Everton next weekend, and Luton face Everton the weekend after. So these 3 match days will either put Brentford comfortably clear and make that Luton v Everton the 3rd week a massive game, or it could put Brentford right back in the mix going into it. And when you bear in mind that Everton have got Nottingham Forest this weekend as well, someone of the 2 sides above Luton are going to pick up points. So Brentford maybe not quite out of it yet, but anything other than defeat for them this weekend and you would say, yeah, they're probably safe. But to look ahead to it, we've got to look back at what happened last weekend, where Luton Town predictably got their first real hammering of the Premier League season away at Manchester City. We'd not lost a game by more than 3 goals at any point this season in the league, but the only team that had done it in any competition have managed to do it again, because Manchester City ran out 5-1 winners late on against Luton. Nothing you saw, we just ran out of steam, and to be fair, towards the end, Rob Edwards stopped taking risks and just rested players for next week, which I don't blame him for at all, really. We did see a Premier League debut for Joe Johnson, a 2nd appearance for Zach Nelson, and a 400th appearance for Pelly Rudder-Kampanzu. So really great to see a few very different milestones there. We also saw a really good goal from Ross Barkley, who has of course been the standout star of the season for many people watching Luton as a neutral. But overall, it was just a bit too much, starting with an incredibly unfortunate own goal again for Daiki Hashioka. You've got to feel for him while playing out of position there. Of course, he was playing at centre-half because Rob Edwards, as we sort of predicted, just didn't take any risks with players that had knocked. So Ted Mengi getting a rest, because if we can win the final 5, we'll be safe, and that's what he needs him to be there for. Issa Kabore couldn't play against his parent club, and Osho and Lokonga not quite there in terms of getting back into the squad. Hopefully, a few murmurings that Osho might be in and around it this week though. But great to see, other than that, a fairly disciplined first half performance. It's not the way Luton want to play. We know the last few weeks they've had to be adaptations to the style because of what's available. And to be honest, when you look at the likes of Fred Onyedinma, who's come back from Rotherham and is playing out of position defensively for Luton, you've had Alfie Doughty and Hashioka tucking in at certain points. Kabore's played centre-half quite a lot. All fullbacks, and to be fair, Reece Burke in the middle of it trying his best, having not been the fittest himself for most of the season. It's been a really monumental effort, but it was the last game where you looked on paper and went, yeah, this isn't going to be a result, is it? Now into 5 games where there is a real opportunity. Brentford at home, Everton at home now moved to Friday night, the 3rd game between now and the end of the season. If Luton can just win this one, maybe nick something at Wolves, who have struggled at home to those lower place sides, then that Everton game becomes huge. After that, West Ham away, not looking likely, but could still be in a European semi-final at that point, are dwindling this season though. And also a final game at home to Fulham, who in theory shouldn't have anything to play for at that point and haven't been great on the road this season, the West Ham game at the weekend aside. This is the hammer time. Luton need to get 2 or 3 players back. Having Kabore and Mengi back next weekend will be a bonus. And maybe having Osho would be lovely, because you could just put 3 actual centre-halves out, which I'm sure would be a dream for Rob Edwards at this point. But you've got to praise the likes of Clark, Berry, Onyedinma, fringe players, even last season at times in Berry and Onyedinma's case, who have come in and made a real impact here. Wasn't a game that was going to define Luton's season, but the next 5 are. And let's have a look at how Brentford got on, because Yes, it took a little bit of time to break them down, but Brentford did get the better of bottom side Sheffield United in the end. A 2-0 win, a game where they weren't completely comfortable, but it was fairly routine in the end. Of course, had one ruled out just before they scored the second as well. It could have looked a little nicer on the score sheet, but that takes Brentford to 32 points, 7 clear of Luton with 5 to go. But as we mentioned, their next 2 games against Luton and Everton could potentially drag them back into it, or make them completely safe for the year. The big hammer blow for all of us was the fact that Palace went and won at Liverpool on Sunday, but again, there's going to be a few twists and turns as the season concludes. And of course, we've got these stupid appeals against point deductions, which could yet overrun the season and make things very difficult knowing whether to celebrate on the final day, saying Luton could survive by less than 2 points at that point. But we know what Brentford are capable of, and although these two sides over recent years have had, well, very similar rises through the Football League, have also had very tight games most of the time, actually the reverse fixture away at Brentford earlier in the season was probably one of Luton's poorer performances of the year, and certainly when we've had a number of players fit, it actually led to the change of style. Tom Lockyer talked about it a bit on punditry in recent weeks, against Arsenal and City that following week, where Luton then went all-out attack against those sides and had that thriller with Arsenal at Kenilworth Road. So I'm not sure what to expect here. I do feel that Luton will have to be aggressive as they were against Bournemouth. A lot of close misses in the first half, a load of onslaught of chances in the second half. And ultimately, that's what Luton are going to have to do. If they concede the first goal, it's going to have to be a very, very all-out attack aggressive display. If they score first, what approach do they take? I'm not sure we've shown this season that we're competent defending a lead, certainly with the number of defensive injuries. So I'd imagine it will be much of the same at that point. But there is also the other threat if we don't have centre-halves back, because as well as Issa Kabore has done at centre-half, as well as Hashioka has covered at times as well, and when Doughty's even had to go in there, the big problem we've had is dealing with that aerial threat at the back post. It caught Kabore out a couple of times against Liverpool and late on against Villa. And you look at the Brentford front line with Ivan Toney, who obviously was on the bench against Sheffield United. You look at people like Vissa, Morpay and Bueno, who, while maybe not the best players in the world, have very clever movement. And Bueno's a player I'm a massive fan of, and I think potentially will cause Luton trouble. It's going to be a game where the two defences are going to have to be on form, because Carlton Morris is going to be aggressive in the box for Luton. It's a type of game where players like Chong and Townsend and Barkley will provide a lot more support than you saw away at City. And Brentford's defence has been pretty suspect for the most part this season as well. So I look at them, particularly with Brentford's flying fullbacks, and think both teams are going to be quite open. Both teams are probably a lot stronger going forward than they are at the back. And we're also trying to predict whether Luton are going to have 3 actual centre-halves out. And if they do, are they actually going to last 90 minutes? So there are a number of questions to be asked and answered. And I'm sure as we get to Saturday, it will get nervy as well. And is that going to play a part? Because, of course, the Luton crowd, very good against Bournemouth, actually, much more of a response. And it really helped the team back into the game. They were good from the start and they stuck with the team at 1-0 down. Whereas Brentford away from home, they've not been great at times this year, but they've produced some brilliant performances over their Premier League seasons. I don't know what to expect. Of course, this is a game where one decision, one mistake, one refereeing call, anything can change the complete context of the game. And there's going to be nerves about, there's going to be mistakes there. I can't see this being anything other than a thriller, because both teams, I know Luton looked a bit better defensively against Bournemouth, forced only shots from range. But Brentford, for me, they've got that potent attacking threat. And they've got the type of threat that Luton struggle with a bit more, particularly aerially. So I'm going to go for a thriller. I have to go for a Luton win, because it's now or never again. The 3 home games are must win, and we've probably got to find an away result somewhere as well if we want to survive. I'm going to go for Luton to nick a thrilling game, a nervy game, an end-to-end game, and a roller coaster of emotions in a game by 3-2 at Kenilworth Road. I have to go for it. I got it right last time, the Bournemouth score, so let's hope it's the same again. With that out the way, let's move on to the rest of the Matchday 34 predictions, a slightly shorter list than normal due to the FA Cup semis. And we'll also have a look back at Matchday 33 to see how you guys got on in comparison to me. Because it was a pretty frustrating one in the end, with only 7 points overall, a perfect score for Burnley's 1-1 draw against Brighton, and correct score outcomes and an added point for Newcastle, Manchester City, the draw between Forest and Wolves, and Chelsea's win against Everton, albeit it was a bit more comprehensive than we thought. A lot of shocks in the title race at the top. Fulham finally found an away performance, and I was cost a point late on in the Bournemouth United game by some suspect refereeing decisions, we should say. And two of you beat me because of that score, where you had 2-2 as your outcome. But let's have a look at the 5 of you that did beat or match my overall score this weekend. Kieran and Kurt, the 2Ks, you joined me on 7. Well done to both of you with a perfect score as well. Mello and Chris both pipped me by a point, 2 of our regulars. 2 perfect scores each for you, which was the difference this weekend. And that was always going to be the case with the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal losing at home. You were going to need some perfect scores to win. The top of the tree, as is so often the case this season, our resident Premier League expert Steve. 10 points for you, a very solid weekend. But can you back it up this week? Get involved in the comments below, see if you can beat or match my overall score, because these are my predictions for the other remaining games. You know I've gone for Luton 3, Brentford 2 in a thriller. Don't care what the score is as long as Luton win. Let me just put it like that. There's another big game at the bottom. The bottom 2 go head to head. Sheffield United v Burnley. And if Burnley can win, will they feel they're back in it with the 2-point deduction teams? What if Everton and Forest draw? Spoiler, I've predicted that. It could put them right back in it. I've gone for Burnley to nick it by 2-1. Sheffield United have been poorer at home generally. And defensively, they're a bit worse too. But Burnley handed Brighton a goal at the weekend, and they so often do to most teams. Wolves v Arsenal, I've gone for a 1-1 draw. I really do feel that weekend is going to change the title race. And I think both teams will slip up again now. Arsenal have got to play Bayern in midweek, which I am recording this before. And Wolves, generally at home to the top side, have had very good game plans and kept it very tight. So I don't see Arsenal running away with the game. If they win, it'll be narrow, but I'm going for 1 goal apiece. I've gone a little bit for heart overhead when it comes to Everton Forest and gone for a 0-0 draw. It will make it quite interesting for next weekend if Luton beat Brentford and Everton draw with Forest. What I want to happen in the Everton-Brentford game, but we'll address that one next week. I just feel both sides have mostly scored 1 or none in their games. Forest did get 2 last time, but then defensively were poorer. Away from home haven't been as strong, probably since the new year under Nuno. And Everton just struggling for goals generally. They were abject on Monday night. It was so poor. Defensively, they were giving up easy goals. Really worried for them at the minute. But from a Luton point of view, it could be a blessing in disguise. Villa v Bournemouth, what an effort from Unai Emery's men at Arsenal. They've got the early kick-off on Thursday, a chance at a European semi-final. Bournemouth played really well against United, but perhaps unfortunate with a couple of penalty decisions, one at each end. I'm going to go for Villa to nick it 2-1. I just think they're a slightly better side. They're probably favourites for the top 4 now, given Tottenham's performance last week. And they can really extend their advantage with the Spurs game called off due to the FA Cup semis for other teams. I'm going to go for Palace and West Ham to be a 1-1 draw. I can see this game being pretty tight. Palace looked a real threat on the counter against Liverpool, but equally against a side that were taking any of their chances, they would have lost by 2 or 3. Dean Henderson's really starting to find form again, which might be a good thing given some of the recent other performances from England goalkeepers. And West Ham, look, they're probably going to be out of Europe after Thursday. They were so good for 80 minutes against Leverkusen, but it cost them on Sunday. And either way, if they all put in a great effort in that late Thursday game at 8 p.m, against one of the best sides, the only unbeaten side in the top 5 leagues all season in all competitions, they're going to have to rest a few at the weekend. And I think that plays into Palace's hand, particularly with their new manager. And then Fulham v Liverpool, I said last week will decide the title. And I think this week continues to. Fulham at home have been excellent this season. They beat Arsenal convincingly at home over the festive period. Liverpool are wasting chances. Salah doesn't look great. They're going to have to play their first team against Atalanta to try and produce a miracle from 3-0 down. And I think on Sunday, it's all just going to come back to catch them up a little bit. I hope that one of them wins because I want the title race to be close. I'm going to go for Fulham to nick it against Liverpool by 2-1. Those are my predictions, probably quite wild ones you would say for matchday 34. Do you agree or disagree with me? Let me know in the comments and give me your predictions for this weekend's action. If you want to stay up to date with everything and you did enjoy this one, please do put a thumbs up on it and subscribe and turn that notification bell on. We were here yesterday with the championship predictions for the weekend. Wow, is that hotting up at the top and bottom of the table. Those predictions up in the eye above, as well as loads of other key playlists too. But thank you very much for watching and being here as always. I'll see you back here on Sunday for more championship predictions before we look ahead to Luton's trip to Wolves next weekend. I'll see you there for all of that. Thank you for watching.